Hi guys, this is Mrs. Rodriguez. I want to go over the notes with you. You should have gotten this notes page from me on Thursday when I saw you last, but if you need a copy, go ahead and ask the sub. They should have extra copies for your notes. Page 36, go ahead and glue that guy down. Essential question, how do mitosis and meiosis compare and contrast? If you think back to the word mitosis, we've actually covered that a couple units back. We talked about how cells, when needing to grow or repair or replace cells, undergo something called mitosis. We talked about interphase and how the DNA gets replicated during interphase in order to be able to produce two identical cells, each containing 46 chromosomes. Well, we're kind of visiting that again this time in preparation for our genetics unit, but this time we're not talking about mitosis as much. We're learning a new one called meiosis. Mitosis is simply one that happens in somatic cells, which are body cells. So when we learned about mitosis, we learned that in interphase, the 46 chromosomes that you're coming in with multiply and become enough to produce 92. And then it undergoes, you remember the stages, prophase, metaphase, anaphase, telophase, and then finally cytokinesis. When they break up, they end with two identical nuclei, each having 46 chromosomes within them. This is what happens when the body needs to replace cells and needs to end up with exactly the same chromosomes that it started with. And if you need a refresher on prophase, metaphase, anaphase, and telophase, just look back on your cell cycle notes and you should see in prophase, the chromosomes became visible. In metaphase, they lined up. In anaphase, they split to the sides. And then in telophase, they finally, two new nuclei form. Well, now we're moving on to a very similar process, but as you can tell, it's a lot longer, and it's called meiosis. Meiosis happens strictly in what we call gametes, or what we call sex cells. There's only two types of sex cells. They're called the egg and the sperm, which we've talked about in the past. The thing with the egg and the sperm, they start out in the same way, where you have 46 chromosomes coming in. The DNA gets duplicated during interphase, giving you a grand total of 92. But then when it undergoes meiosis, if it was the same as mitosis, which is the key difference, then every time an egg and a sperm comes together, you'd have 46 and 46, and you'd have 92 chromosomes again, which is not true. Gametes or sex cells undergo two different rounds of division. If you can tell, it undergoes prophase, metaphase, anaphase, telophase once, and then it does it again. It undergoes prophase, metaphase, anaphase, telophase without having replicated a second time. A couple things I want you to note. The end result in meiosis is different in that instead of ending with two identical cells, your end is 4 cells, and they are not 4 cells, not genetically identical. And the reason why that's important is because something happens in the process of meiosis. Not only does it undergo 2 rounds of division, but there is a process called crossing over that happens in meiosis that doesn't happen in mitosis that is really, really important. And this process, I left you a video. It happens right here in prophase 2. It's called crossing over, and I want you to watch that video. And that crossing over is really, really important because what happens is the chromosomes end up switching positions, and what happens is there's genetic variety in these 4 egg and sperm cells that are created. The other thing I want you to keep track of is, you see how in mitosis you start with 46 chromosomes? We consider this a diploid number. I just want you to think of this prefix di. It means 2. It means you have 2 sets of chromosomes. Well, when you end in mitosis, you end exactly how you started. You started with 46 and you ended with 46. So we consider this ending to be diploid as well, because you're ending with the exact same number as when you started. Well, in meiosis, you start diploid. Again, that just means you have 2 sets of chromosomes. But after undergoing 2 rounds of division, instead of ending with the same number, each one of these cells ends up with 23, 23, 23, and 23, because the cell divides twice. It goes from that 92, it divides once to each having 46 and 46, and then it does it again, and you end up with 23 in each one. Now, since they each have 23, when the egg and the sperm join back up together, that's how a human being ends up with 46 chromosomes altogether once again. We consider this number of 23 to be a haploid number. Just think of the word half. So it's half the number of chromosomes. It's just one set of chromosomes as compared to how it started. In mitosis, you start diploid, you end diploid, and in meiosis, you start diploid, but you end haploid. And the most important thing is this concept of crossing over. I left you a video that I want you to watch on this process of crossing over, and I want you to answer the questions on the sheet.